Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and thank you, Public Policy Forum, for having conferred this honor on me. I accept it with all humility. These days, I am extremely scared of accepting invitations from lit fests, because ostensibly they are lit fests, but once you have accepted in principle, you find that they want you to talk on the economy, and the lit fest was only a pretext. This one at least is somewhat different, because I have known Scotch and Samir Co-Chair for the Public Policy Forum, which has organized events, done research, conferred awards in the area of economics, governance, equity, inclusion. This seems to be the first time that the Public Policy Forum has moved into the area of something that remotely approaches a lit fest. But nonetheless, Samir wanted me to talk on public policy, which I wanted to duck, which is why, if you've noticed, I told him, get me to speak after the award has formally been conferred. And the reason for that is, in view of what I'm about to say, I'm not very sure that Samir Co-Chair would have given me the award had he known what I was going to say. In a way, my life, and I am looking back and reflecting on what has happened, in a way, my life has been a series of coincidences, accidents. And I want to very briefly tell you a little bit about those. My mind goes back to the first literary award that I ever received. I was born in a distant place known as Shillong, which is now in Meghalaya. Then it was the capital of undivided Assam. Shillong then, most people know about Shillong now. Shillong then was cut off from the mainstream. Communications were not that easy. And I spent the initial years of my life in Shillong, and so far as I was concerned, as a child who was less than 10, my connection with the external world was in the form of the Illustrated Weekly of India. The Illustrated Weekly of India in Shillong in those days was not delivered at home. It did not come by mail. It did not come through vendors. My father used to pick up a copy every Monday and bring it to me and give it to me. In Illustrated Weekly in those days, this is whiffs of nostalgia, and I suspect very few people here will recognize what I'm talking about. There used to be something run by a lady named Auntie Wendy. And Auntie Wendy had a competition. I was about 7 or 8, 7 I think. Auntie Wendy had a competition of all things, write in 600 words the story of the Ramayana. So I wrote that, got an award, and that in a way was my first literary award. A box of plasticine arrived, which was a big thing for me at that particular age. In the school that I studied in, this was a school known as the St. Peter's School in Shillong. It was a Western missionary school where you recited the Lord's Prayer every morning in Domini Patri et Fiat Spiritus Sancti. It was more important for you to know which year the Battle of Agincourt was fought and in which year the Magna Carta was signed than anything about Indian history. I could hardly speak Bengali, and I certainly did not know how to read it or write it. As fate would have it, I was catapulted overnight into a Ramakrishna Mission school known as Narendrapur near Calcutta, which was completely different, and it took a long time for me to get adjusted to a situation where everything was so very ostensibly Bengali. And I do believe that for most people, you think in a certain language. Even if you are multilingual, you do tend to think in a certain language and then convert it to another language. So my language was still essentially English, because I told you I could hardly read in Bengali, I could hardly write it. Anyway, the usual kinds of things happened. Editor of the school magazine, write in English. I think I read somewhere this is an Aquarian attribute, that Aquarians are never interested in only one thing under the sun. They're interested in several different things. And now I realize that as a Bengali, I have been born in the wrong century. I should have been born in the 19th century. In 19th century Bengal, people were interested in so many different things. But be that as it may, I was born in the 20th century. When I was in standard 11, my school sent me to an on-the-spot essay competition. So I went, expecting that essay competition would be in English. When I turned up, I discovered that the essay competition was to be held in Bengali. Sort of for a fleeting moment, I thought, let me run away. Anyway, I wrote that essay competition. That first gave me the confidence to write in Bengali. I did win the prize. I did win the first prize. That gave me the confidence to write in Bengali. And I began to empathize with someone about whom very few people in this hall will have heard. His name was Michael Madhusudhan Datta. Michael Madhusudhan Datta and I share the same birth date. So I empathized with him, but that was not the only reason. The main reason I empathized with him is that Michael Madhusudhan Datta began to write in English. In those days, he used to write things like, I sigh for Albion's distant shore. Subsequently, he switched to writing in Bengali and had phenomenal contributions in terms of shaping the nature of the Bengali language. One of the things that a publisher is still chasing me for is a biography of Michael Madhusudhan Datta. There is a very good competent biography done by Ghulam Murshid. I don't think it's sufficiently good, but anyway, there's a publisher out there waiting for me to write a biography. So I began to empathize with him. And one of the first things I wrote in Bengali, apart from that essay, was a translation of a play that Michael Madhusudhan Datta had written in English called My Fair Lady, which was about the Sangyukta and Prithviraj story. Unfortunately, in those days, there were no computers, so a copy of that has got lost. And then, like every true Bengali of that particular formative age, I started to write poetry. Most of it, Samir, you don't know this. There are a lot of things you don't know. A lot of it was revolutionary poetry. A little bit of it was also love poetry. So those things were published. Nothing happened for some time, and then I switched to writing fiction in English. Again, you don't know about this. Fiction does not mean novels. I wrote several short stories in English which were published in all kinds of different places. In fact, a couple of them have featured in a book on Indians writing in English. After that, to cut the long story short, I got into the rat race. And the rat race was one where you had to write on economics, you had to focus on economics, you wrote in economics, that was the rat race. This continued until in the year 2004, I had a brush with death. When I had that brush with death in the year 2004, I decided that if I survive in this particular calendar year, I am going to produce 10 books and opt out of the rat race. 10 books, 12 books. 12 books does not mean only authored books, that's logically impossible. So authored, edited, combined, I must try to publish 12 books in this calendar year, and then I'm going to opt out of the rat race. If you're trying for 12 books, you have to set a higher target. So it so happens that in that particular calendar year, 15 books were published. Some of them still retain a lot of relevance. A few of them are there outside. And then I opted out of the rat race in 2004. What does opting out of the rat race mean? Economics is still my bread and butter, but it ceased to be my jam. And therefore, in 2004, when I reinvented my life, when I reinvented my priorities, when I rediscovered what I wanted to do, since then, I have been writing whatever I feel like writing. And that got me into the area of translations, which some of you may know about. Translations beginning from Sanskrit to English, beginning with the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, the Valmiki Ramayana, and now the Puranas. Quite often people ask me, what is the book you're working on next? I find that a very difficult question to answer because there is always a pipeline. And in terms of the pipeline, the next books, let me quickly mention this. The next books that I've got in the pipeline is a book on the agenda for the government, edited with Ashley Tellis and C. Raja Mohan, names you will recognize. There's a book on economic reforms with a co-author named Divakar Jurani, which will be published next month. There is a translation of the Brahma Puran that's coming. One of India's greatest translators from Sanskrit to English was someone named Manmathanath Datta. So Manmathanath Datta's biography, very little is known about him. Biography is due to be published next month again. So that's about it. Before I conclude, in my reinvention, rediscovery, there's one person who has been a part of this transition. So if Sameer Kochar permits, may I ask my wife Suparna Banerjee to just stand up, because this award is just as much about her as it is about me. Thank you very much.